I need y'all to channel me on this. Yeah, T Swift on the track. Peace Queen.
Peace King.
Peace Queen.
Peace King.
Peace Queen.
Peace King.
Peace Queen.
Peace King.
Hotep Queen.
Hotep King.
Hotep Queen. Yeah.
Yo, what's going on, everybody? I go by the name of Jay Freedom. It's important that you guys learn this because later on down the road, as we get into our studies, we're going to find out about the different frequencies that tie into the earth. And you guys are going to learn that there's two main frequencies, and one of them is a fear frequency. The other one is a love frequency. It's important that you know that everything I do, I generate out of is that love frequency. So in no shape, way or form am I putting any information out there to brainwash anybody or to get anybody to believe in my beliefs. I believe belief is a form of ignorance. I want people to come into right knowledge, and I don't want you to take anything that I'm saying in these video clips and just choose to believe them. I encourage everybody out to go out and do their research and to understand these different things, because only then can we start to coming to the point where we're all in universal truth, and that's what it's really about, and waking people up, or what I call getting people unplugged from the matrix. Now, what did we learn from Breaking the Chains 2? As Dr. Ben took us into our history, we know that before the Bible, before Genesis, before anything, there was people here. So we have an issue there, because in the Bible it says first man and the first woman story in Genesis. So that means these things had to derive from somewhere. As a matter of fact, when you research the Hebrew, when you find out who the first Hebrew is in the Bible, the first Hebrew is a man named Abraham. But it doesn't say Abraham is from an immaculate birth. It says Abraham was the first Hebrew, so that means he had parents, as Dr. Ben pointed out in the previous clip. So these stories came from somewhere. Abraham had to receive this knowledge. So what are you trained to do when you want to know something, right? And if you are a Christian belief, you go into your Bible. Where does it say that Abraham was sent to learn? When you go into the Bible and you research and find out where he received his education, he had to even come into Kemet to learn these things. So we have Kemet as being the foundation of the Bible. That is a fact. Now, this is something that our brother 52 Blaze failed to neglect, or he was not unsure, or maybe he just didn't have that information. So we put that out there to make sure we are in agreement. Before we can move forward, we have to acknowledge that fact. This is what we call right knowledge. These were spiritual stories. And when we start to get into the melanin section of that, you're going to understand that non-African people are what we call melanin deficient. So they lack the understanding of the spirituality of these stories. So things that were simply spiritual, they tried to take and make literal stories off that. And in those two books that Homer wrote, he even specifies that it came from Ethiopia, as he pointed out, as Dr. Ben pointed out in the previous clip.
According to Plutarch, what he says about Osiris is that Osiris was associated with the moon, and the moon has its lunar cycle and then disappears at the end of the lunar month, and then 3 days later is then reborn, and this is then the resurrection of Osiris after being dead for 3 days. So Osiris is then the god of death and resurrection.
And Seth, or Zetesh, is never thrown away. He's an important part of the whole series of gods. He's not the annihilating factor.
Set was not purely evil. Set represented the forces of discordance.
Zetesh still has to be there. If you take him away, you're taking away part of reality. But he shouldn't be king. So that balance between Hor and Zetesh is one where Hor, Heru, is meant to be very much on top and ruling.
And our ancestors were very inclusive. And they knew for certain that, as I said, there was a little bit of good in the worst of us and a little good of bad in the best of us. And they represented that in this way.
So the reigning ruler in Kemet, and this is taken over to an extent in Kush, the reigning king is Horus, because he's managed to take over and rule.
The Egyptian creation story, in many respects, represents the development of a civilization and the growing of Egypt, I suppose. And it's coming out of something that's very simple and coming out of nature, and then is being developed by man and being developed also into obviously one of the greatest civilizations that there ever was.
The spiritual world represented the physical world. So as it was in heaven, so as it was on earth. The Africans came together in Kemet to build a heaven on earth.
So what you see is this combination of balance and harmony. The essence of what we find within traditional African society is an understanding of the totality of life that is literally matrilineal and is paired with the masculine energy in order to maintain its force and its operation throughout society. If you suppress the female, you suppress 50% of the power of the creator.
It seems to be really important, and in many respects the sort of male and female seem to represent the two different forces coming together. And I suppose it's a bit like the unification of Upper and Lower Egypt in some respects.
Because they understood that it wasn't just about gender. It was about the understanding of the energy and how it moves, how masculine energy moves and how feminine energy moves, and how to marry the two, which created balance, life.
The idea was to create a land which was like the land that was up in the skies and beneath the earth. And in that sense, they saw that how they were arranged in families was also how the gods must also be arranged in families, and how the spiritual energies of the universe must also be arranged in families because they are arranged in families.
Three of the most important Neteru in Kemet were Asar, Aset, and Heru.
Or to give them the more usual names, Osiris, Isis, and Horus. These three deities originally came from Kush.
These are very, very important triumvirate.
Their stories are as much mythology as they are history.
Now, according to Diodorus Siculus, who was one of the ancient Greek historians, Osiris was originally a community leader of very early Kush. He doesn't call him a king of Kush, but he makes it quite clear he was a leader.
Asar is regarded as the founding father of Kemet. He unified the two lands. He established the first nation-state in the recorded history of humanity. He is said to have introduced writing, the writing which the ancient Kemites referred to as Medu Neter, or the writing of God when it was written, or the words of God when it was spoken. He is also said to have introduced agriculture and theology.
Also decided to take civilization to certain parts of the Nile Valley as well as to other parts of the world.
Asar married a beautiful Nubian woman by the name of Aset, who was his co-regent, not his inferior, his co-regent. And when Asar decided that he was going to travel to other parts of Africa to share his technology with his brothers and sisters on the continent, he left his wife Aset to run their nation.
And he was very successful, very admired, and this provoked the jealousy of his brother, Set.
And Set then plotted to overthrow his brother Asar.
Set, or Sete in ancient Egyptian, murdered his brother, dismembered his body into 14 pieces, and then scattered those 14 pieces throughout Kemet.
When Aset learned of the murder and dismemberment of her husband, she fled for her life, and then she went searching for the missing parts of her husband's body. Aset found 13 of the 14 parts of Asar's body, And as she found each body part, she cleaned it, she anointed it with oils, and she laid all 13 parts out, and she literally remembered her husband, wrapped his entire body in bandages, and created the first mummy in the recorded history of humanity. As the Set was preparing to bury her husband, she grieved because she was about to bury the man that she loved. She grieved because she was still a virgin. They had never consummated their marriage, and thus she would never bear children by the man that she loved. And according to the story written on many papyri in Kemet, carved on several temples in Kemet, the spirit of Asar came and impregnated his virgin wife, Aset. And then 9 months later, the virgin Aset gave birth to their son, Heru.
Now, in the case of Isis or Set, she is the original Virgin Mother, and she is seen suckling Horus. He is shown as a child suckling his mother, and he's wearing the pharaonic headdress, making it clear that he was born a king.
Haru is the son of Osiris, and he's the embodiment of order. He has to take over the kingship, and he has to do that through a struggle.
So Heru was born, the son of a virgin. He was born with a specific purpose in life. That was to restore his father's kingdom, to do battle with his uncle Set and reclaim his father's throne.
Heru would then take up his father's struggle, in a way, against his uncle Set.
One of those classic battles, not so much between good and evil, it's more a battle between order and anarchy.
And Heru eventually triumphs over Set.
At that moment, Heru was transformed, miraculously transformed into a falcon. He flew into heaven to meet with his father Asar, told Asar of his victory over Set. His father blessed him, and Heru then returned to Kemet as the legitimate heir to the throne. And when he ascended to the throne, the symbol of the Heru Badet, the winged sun disk, was a symbol that was carved above the entrance of every temple in Kemet to serve as a reminder.
I can't live in a jar. I vibrate like the strings of a guitar. I seek solitude like the jaguar. Stand black and strong like a panther. I am a manifestation of the greatest power. I am divine inertia flower that blossoms to the rhythm of my universe. I am unrooted to the existence of this world's curse. Our spirituality is beyond the earth. We are not owners, only a part of this vast world. So embrace your work.
Peace queen,
Peace king,
peace queen,
peace king,
peace queen.